How's everyone? Very
Very,
good.
very stimulating, very well.
Good, I'm glad you're all warmed up. So, looks like Val's got the PowerPoint loaded. Do we have the slide advancers? That's it. So before we get started, did you want to make any opening remarks? I might just take the agenda.
Well, we have, I guess overall, I'm really happy to see us continuing to make progress, keeping to a timeline for this project. It's been important for us. As you know, we've had some conference calls and we've talked about, you know, what is the internal versus external drivers for making our timeline, and we all feel that we want to keep the pace going forward, and I feel that we're doing that, and I appreciate that. And sometimes I know we've pushed the consultants a little bit to, okay, good.
Yeah,
Good, but you know, so tonight we're going to be discussing our RFP. We're going to be talking about criteria that we're going to be using for assessing the proposals as they come in. And we're going to talk a little bit of housekeeping and how we want the hearing to go on the 30th. So all of these things are leading up to the June 8th board meeting, where we want to be able to approve the RFP so that we can get it out to potential affiliate partners. So that's the goal, and that's the next benchmark in the project, is get to that point.
Great.
Point of order, and that is for people that see these videos for the first time, I think it'd be good to introduce or have our consultants introduce themselves again.
Okay,
And
sure.
Just a suggestion.
Great idea.
Sure. I'm not sure where the video camera is, but I'm Sarah Cave
There's
from
two.
Sarah Cave Consulting. Steve Hebner is my partner, and he is not here this evening. He's traveling this week. But his fingerprints have been all over what you're about to hear, and he will be joining me on Tuesday and Thursday of next week for the individual meetings with each of you. So, did you want to mention about the legal review of the RFP?
Yes, thank you for reminding me on that point. We have asked, and I asked Sarah and Steve to make a recommendation for someone who has done merger acquisition work with hospitals in the area. They recommended a local attorney with Perkins Coie and Redmond, and so we engaged Ann for that work and that work only, and that is to review the RFP. So she'll be doing that for us here in the week and a half ahead, so that you know that we've had external review, legal review on the RFP before it comes to you on the 8th.
Okay.
May I respond or say something? And that is, Perkins Coie is a top flight legal. My brother-in-law worked for them. And the problem is they're very expensive. And
Most
expensive. And so I'm curious as to how much we're paying. And we're never informed of that, it seems, in cases like this.
Yeah, this is a very limited engagement. It is simply only to review the RFP. It is not general legal services at all. So it's just to get that one piece of work.
We really counseled that it was extremely important to have legal review of the RFP, and I think the keeping to the June 8th deadline allows us to try to get the RFP out the door very soon after that meeting date. And Steve and I had a really high level of discomfort not having eyes on that document from both a legal perspective and a public hospital district perspective. So Ann Redmond is someone who has worked with healthcare systems to put together a number of deals that have involved smaller critical access hospitals.
I will add that Jane Jay, serving as our general counsel, will not frequently, but as needed, he will triage issues and then ask for other help. This is a very similar situation where we wanted someone who had experience with merger and acquisition and the RFPs that lead to them. And that's another reason why Ann was asked to come in on this.
So we will do everything possible to limit the amount of time that she needs to spend on this. What I will say is she's a very quick study. She asked for a little bit of background. I put a few things together in an email, sent her a couple of documents. We had one 30-minute phone call, and she's kind of off to the races now. And promised to provide comment in time so that we have some of that incorporated for our individual meetings with whom we're sharing.
It's the first 30-minute free consultation. This one they have a free 30-minute consult.
Cheapskate.
Likely it's billable, but I think she has the message loud and clear that this is a limited engagement and that you all would like to keep costs down. So with that, I have one more quick update, and that is to thank Commissioner Spikers for keeping us honest. I actually brought a handout of one slide from the market assessment that has been updated with more accurate still estimated, and I'll remind you why, emergency department market share. So the original number that you saw was, I think, approaching 60%. The outpatient data that Snoqualmie had provided by CPT code level had been inadvertently double counted in the figure for the ED visits for Snoqualmie Valley Hospital. So the actual number of visits was 1,560, and when you divide that by the total outpatient estimate of 6,001, it's 28%. Okay? So that's still, I'm sorry, it's about halfway down.
The emergency department, yeah, thank you.
The ones that are orange are the ones that were
But we didn't believe
the highest volume and growing. So still substantively higher than your acute inpatient market share, but that is to be expected for an emergency department, a local emergency department. You have a lot of people who have urgent needs and they have to get them taken care of, and they want to get them taken care of close to home. So that is the correction. Any questions? All right.
Sure.
Okay, so let's move on. What we are going to spend just a little bit of time on this evening is we're going to recap, just do a quick recap of the RFP outline, and the reason for that is because the criteria that we've developed map to the RFP largely. And you will each have the benefit of seeing the draft RFP when we meet with you next week. But for the time being, pull out this outline and we will go through that together in just a moment. And it's a one-page
separate page.
document like this. Yep. Okay, so we're going to do a quick review of that document, and then we are going to review the other document that is in your packet that has the red at the top. It's horizontal, and that's the criteria. And we will walk through that together, see if you have questions, comments, additions, things we need to consider, and we're going to give you a little bit of a homework assignment on that. Would like to once again put up the list of RFP recipients that we had previously developed. We've added a couple of organizations to that list and want to give you another chance this evening to take a look at it, hopefully get that finalized so that we're ready to roll and have done some initial outreach to each of those organizations to, grease the skids and let them know they'll be receiving something from us. And then lastly, we'll finalize the plan for the May 30th public hearing and talk a little bit about future public hearings. So that's the scoop. Group agreements, I know you all have these probably memorized by now, but like to keep reminding everyone of the way in which we're intending to move through this process to suspend assumptions, listen, don't reload, balance advocacy with inquiry, attribute positive intent, and that I will continue to try my best to tightly facilitate and move us through the agenda, looking to Dariel as needed to assist. To Madam Chairperson, I missed the beginning of the orientation event. Okay, so where we are in the affiliation process, we are still here, kind of in between these two phases because we're getting into the RFP now. Once that's all done and out, we anticipate things will get fairly active. There's going to be a short period of some silence while we're waiting for questions to come in and the initial intents to respond and that sort of thing. But then things should start to move along at a pretty quick clip. So that is a reminder of where we are in the process. So now we're going to go to this outline document, the one-pager, and just quickly walk through how we have the RFP draft organized. The beginning, the first section is background on Snoqualmie Valley Hospital, its mission, vision, and values. And then there is a fairly substantive section that talks specifically about what makes this an attractive opportunity. So it talks a lot about the strengths of your organization, the facilities that you have, your critical access status, your strong leadership team, a number of different components that are really internal to your organization that would be attractive for another organization, as well as highlighting some of the key pieces from the market assessment about why this is such a great market, the growth potential, the kinds of service growth and opportunity there would be for an affiliate partner, those kinds of things. So that's the background section. Oh, the last piece in the background section is your guiding principles and goals of affiliation. So we're very transparently putting those out in the very beginning of the RFP so that the respondents can actually speak to those in their responses. Yes,
Where
question.
is the description of Snoqualmie Valley Hospital? I'm having a hard time finding it in these papers.
All you have at the moment is an outline because remember we
Yeah, I know.
decided.
We did it before. I just thought you were going to give it to us again tonight. Okay, so what paper? Is this paper?
The one-page outline is what we're, yes,
Okay,
I have a
so
slide
that's
for
the
each of these
RFP
sections.
outline. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So there were just a quick reminder of why we're not actually bringing the RFP draft tonight. 2 reasons. Number one, we felt it was extremely important to have legal review of the document. And number 2, we felt it was equally as important to have some individual touch points with each of you to have the opportunity to go through it in more detail And that way we can be a little bit more expeditious with everyone's time on June 8th and get to approval of the document. So right now, I'm just re-grounding you on the outline because we're gonna be talking a little bit more in depth about the criteria in a couple minutes, and they really map to each of these sections. So I just want you to be re-familiarized with this.
How soon do we get the real RFP out, right? Because it takes for us a while to really review prior to June 8th. So is that coming a week before June 8th?
So we have individual meetings scheduled with each of you. Some of you we're meeting with on Tuesday, and some of you we're meeting with on Thursday. Now, depending on when we hear back from legal counsel with comment, we have been promised that we will receive her comment on this initial draft enough in advance to be able to get you the RFP draft for our individual meetings with you. But we will have ample time to sit and walk through each section with you at that time. Is that helpful?
Yes.
And then, you know, once we gather all of your individual input, we'll get another draft turned around, and you will get that. My understanding is the board packet will go out a week ahead.
Thank you.
Ready to move on? Okay. All right, so this is the part where it might be much easier to look along on your outline here. So this is really the meat of the RFP. So a reminder that what we've asked in section A of the RFP requirements is for the responding organizations to describe their future vision for Snoqualmie Valley Hospital. And we've left that question wide open so that we can hear really what they have in mind. And the idea is this flows right out of you having stated what you view as the opportunity and what your goals are. And so now they get a chance to sort of paint a picture for you. The second section is the fairly detailed section where we are asking for a lot of information about the responding organization. Everything from their mission and history to their financial position, which would include things like their bond rating, their operating performance, capital position, those kinds of things. And how they approach physician recruitment and retention, how they've organized their medical staff functions and administrative functions, and how they go about making decisions. If they have experience with other affiliations, what have those been? What have been the benefits? And what do they perceive would be the benefits for Snoqualmie Valley Hospital? And then how have they responded, and how are they going to respond to the next chapter of healthcare reform? And finally, just a question about their leadership team and understanding a little bit about their bios. So that is the second kind of meaty part of the RFP requirements section, the partner overview. And then section C is around the transaction. So here is where we have translated the transaction provisions that we walked through and spent some time on at the last work study session into some specific commitments that we're really asking of an affiliate partner and would like for the respondent to be able to address. And then some preferences. So some of those things that you indicated when we moved through that discussion were important, but maybe not deal breakers. And so we're really asking for a thorough response of how the responding organization would propose, what they would what they believe the transaction ought to look like, given those commitments and preferences, what they would propose. So that is the next part. And then the last little bullet point in that section has to do with, you've asked us to kind of move through this process fairly expeditiously. We would like to understand what they believe their capacity and ability to actually reach definitive agreement and kind of move through that process as expeditiously as possible. So that is the third piece, and then the last is kind of the other information. Here's where we might see some legal considerations, some things that are specific to your public hospital district status that need to be sort of noted here in this section. Ask for references, those kinds of things within this last section.
I'm a little confused about section C. It's not clear which of these apply to the hospital and which to the respondent here. Where it says SVH transaction provisions must have and preferences. That's from the hospital. Then the proposed transaction structure, is that from both the hospital and the respondent, or?
So the proposed transaction, no. What we're doing is we're stating up front, before we ask you to describe to us what you view as the optimal structure and what you would propose, let us share with you, we've given some thought to some of the things that are really important to us with regard to the transaction.
And that's bullet point 1, right?
And that is the very first part of section C, yes.
That's the
Bullet
first
point
check mark there, right?
This here,
That's what we say.
yes. Now in this section, we're saying, tell us how you would design, what would the structure look like? What are you proposing? Is it a lease, a purchase, something else that we haven't thought of?
Okay, I guess I would feel more comfortable if it were clear that that is from the partner. It's not clear.
It will be as well.
It will absolutely be, it is really clear in our working draft. So I apologize that you're having to work with a
Just
Cliff's
the bullet
Notes
point.
version, but
Correct.
if you are not convinced that the language is strong enough when we get together or clear enough
Well, I just want to understand it for tonight. I'm sure it will be cleared up.
to clarify, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
lease versus purchase, financial commitments, proposed governments, all of this is coming from the respondent.
Correct. Yep. Yep. Okay. And then finally, in the RFP, we will have the evaluation, will be transparent about the evaluation criteria. What we, I think that that's what we need to give every respondent the opportunity to understand how their proposals will be evaluated. One of the things we're going to ask you to do as homework before we meet with you individually is to give us an idea of how you would weight some of these criteria so that when we get to the actual process of reviewing and evaluating the proposals, we have a way to do that. So that's kind of the outline of the RFP. And so now what I'd like to do is move to this other document that's in the table format and has the red up above it. Yep, oh, you guys have it.
It's just.
Yeah, mine is facing
Up and down, sorry, it's not horizontal.
Sorry, no, it's
No,
down this way.
And so what I'm gonna do is you may want to have that RFP outline right next to the one that we just looked at and just have it side by side here so that you can follow along. So So the first criteria is the degree to which the RFP respondent's strategic vision for Snoqualmie Valley Hospital, remember that was that more open-ended question at the very beginning, optimizes the attributes and opportunities described in part 1 of the RFP. So in that background section, remember we are painting a picture of what makes this organization special and unique and what makes this market such an intriguing opportunity. And so, so here we want to understand the degree to which their response and their strategic vision statement addresses those things. And what I did in this document here, not on the slides because it would be too small, is I provided a little thumbnail sketch description of the kinds of things that we are talking about in the RFP, that we are describing when we're talking about the organization and the opportunity. Clear?
Could you repeat that? Where did you make those notes on the side? I'm not quite sure.
In the middle section here. So we have asked them to describe a strategic vision for how they would imagine, what they imagine for this organization going forward. And we've asked them to respond to the opportunity that we presented to them.
Okay.
Okay.
That's good. We want their vision. That's good.
Yeah. So in the middle is just a little description of that particular criterion and what's in that section of the RFP. And a little bit more detail than what's in your outline. The second criterion is the RFP respondents' demonstrated willingness to embrace the guiding principles and goals of affiliation outlined in part 1 of the RFP. So I've just, in the middle section here in the description, I've just repeated the guiding principles that you all landed on and the goals of affiliation in the way that they have been expressed in the current draft of the RFP is how I've outlined them here.
Sarah, I have a thought.
Yes.
And that is that in this section, we may want to, and I'm thinking ahead about the commissioners weighting these principles and goals. And I think we may have to stratify this some. For example, there may be, I would expect different weighting on the goal of ensuring long-term viability and its related commitment to debt versus the goal of elevating brand presence.
Sorry, that's why
That's someone who loves you, I'm sure.
That's your alarm.
Time to wake up.
So
A single weight for all of that may be too general, is what I'm suggesting.
okay. So
Wouldn't that just, wouldn't you go back to the must-haves kind of, and maybe just those 4 or 5 must-haves kind of, you know, as part of the, I mean, if you're looking at the must-haves.
yeah, well, we're gonna get to that in another section. So I think I'm not sure if I can totally think on my feet on this
Well,
specific
just hold the idea then.
suggestion, so I think I will hold the idea.
Okay.
To that point, where is the item about viability and survival and so forth?
That's on page 2 of 5 under goals of affiliation.
Oh, you've gone on page
Yeah.
2. I see.
Yes,
I'm still stuck on page 1.
Actually, Tom, I feel like, I wish we'd gotten these ahead so we could at least familiarize ourselves with it, so that we came to even ask questions. Right now, we're kind of just listening and not even knowing what to ask, or it's just kind of,
Well,
I mean, I don't feel familiar with it.
Section 2 is what you developed, though.
Pardon?
Section 2 is what you developed. It's your guiding principles.
Yeah.
Well, what we did at our goals. And it's then been put into this format of something that we'll want to be thinking about when the proposals come in.
Yeah, I do agree, I think the whole board, with respect to that idea, that long-term viability, i.e. a long-term lease,
Yeah.
is gonna be really, going to be probably at the top of my list.
Right.
So,
So let me tell you what we had originally intended with the weighting, and we are jumping ahead just a bit, because
Sorry, Sarah.
we're gonna talk about the weighting. Actually, maybe, let me finish my thought. Just debating the merits of jumping ahead. So what we had originally intended is that you would provide your weighting based on each criterion. So there are 2 places where this particular issue that you're speaking to right now, it appears as a goal in criterion 2, and then it later appears in criterion 4, which we haven't quite gotten to yet on the transaction structure. And so you have 2 opportunities, if we were doing a sticky dot exercise, which we're not gonna do tonight, to place all your dots on those 2 criteria.
So the weighting column applies to each individual bullet?
No,
You want a weighting of the entire section? I think we ought to be weighting the bullets, because for example, Commissioner Stryker was saying, ensure long-term viability is more important, say, than elevating brand presence or gross growth, etc. That's primary, so I think we ought to weight that one before moving on to elevate brand presence.
so that was the suggestion that Tom was making.
Oh, okay.
And what we might need to do is let's move through the rest of the document and get to the weighting discussion, and then let's think about whether there's an elegant way to make that happen. I think the way we had conceived of it now, you would be weighting just the criterion itself, but you would be able to place virtually all your weight on 1 or 2 criteria that have that viability component.
I have a question.
Yes.
Would not some of this deciding about weighting things, you could determine with the individual meetings with us?
That's what we're gonna do. So I was gonna give you all a homework assignment. And then when we meet with you individually, you would bring your homework, and we would walk through it and make sure that
Will
we're.
the interviews with commissioners take place, all of them, in time for you to then reflect that into your document?
Yes.
And we get it some days before the 7th of June.
So,
See, now we have a deal in our bylaws that said documents for board meetings should be received about a week in advance.
Yes.
We got all this on very short notice, not a criticism, just that's why we may be having some trouble understanding this. We haven't studied it, had time to study it.
so, I'm in terms of the difference between your work study sessions and your board meetings, I wish that we could have had some of this to you sooner. We are kind of moving things along at a fairly fast clip. So, certainly for your actual board meeting, you will be getting your board packet 1 full week in advance, since it's an official business meeting. and not a study session.
Well, I was just asking the question, will you have completed the interviews with all commissioners early
Yes.
enough so you will have time to meet the
Yes.
goal that you're stating right now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm one of the last ones to be interviewed, so that's why I'm concerned.
Well, we'll just have to stay in it right to the bitter end with you, Gene.
Okay.
All right. So the next criterion is the third one, and this is the board's assessment of best organizational fit, along with benefits to Snoqualmie Valley Hospital and district residents, based on the respondent's response to the provisions in Part 2, Section B, and that is the partner overview. So if you look at to the next column over, that is where we have asked them to describe their organization in quite a bit of detail, including how their way that they run their organization might be appealing for this community and the hospital. And so here we're asking you all to make a judgment call around how well does this organization fit? Is this a good fit for us? And would it be a relationship that would truly benefit the community? All right, number 4, which is on page 3 of 5, is the district board's assessment of the transaction structure terms and considerations and determination that they are consistent and favorable with regard to the preferences that are summarized in the transaction provisions, Part 2, Section C. So that's where we had outlined what commitments and preferences you have in terms of the transaction structure and asked the responding organization to propose what they would view as the best deal structure. And the commitments and preferences are listed here in the middle column. These are expounded upon in the RFP draft, but just kind of a quick reminder, this is where we are stating how important it is that we would have either a long-term lease or an asset purchase that assures the district is able to fulfill its debt obligations, that the financial strength and clinical integration of the other organization will be sufficient to ensure appropriate local healthcare services for this community, and the list goes on. So I won't continue to read those, but the top portion are the things that you prioritized the highest, and then the preferences are the ones that you felt strongly about, but maybe prioritized a little bit lower than the others. And then the 5th criterion, any other criteria the district deems important in assessing an RFP respondent's proposal. So this is a little bit of a catch-all, but it's an important catch-all. So it may be that a particular respondent provides something in their proposal that is truly unique and sets it apart from any of the others. And it may not be anything that we've thought of.
Kind of hard to weight that one at this point, right?
Yeah. So, so it's a matter of, just allowing you some freedom to be able to evaluate proposals based on that. The 6th one is not as relevant right now for where we are in the process. It's on page 5. And it is really specific to anything that you'd like to consider once we get past the RFP process and you're actually working through a process with a finalist, and some things that you think would be really important in kind of consummating a relationship like this. So those are the criteria that we have come up with. Are there?
Could you identify or define the difference between final proposal, letter of intent, definitive agreement?
Yes. So there's gonna be 2 formal steps in the RFP process. The first is that we will be asking for an intent to respond.
So what?
Intent to respond. So a much shorter statement from the organization that they are in fact preparing a response to the proposal, so that we have an idea.
Response to the RFP.
Excuse me,
They'll have
to
a
the
time
RFP.
frame for that. Is that correct?
Yes,
Yeah,
there'll be a time frame for that. The second formal piece is a little bit longer time frame for their actual proposal, their response to the RFP. Then you're gonna go through a process and we will have a team of people identified to be evaluating the proposals. And from that may emerge 1 or 2 top proposals.
And Sarah, when you say a team of people, we're talking about, this is the,
So we haven't even gotten that far in
Okay.
discussing how we're working through that whole process. So if you have a
Potentially 3
specific
proposals.
idea.
Okay.
So say that again?
Or potentially 3 proposals.
Sure, I'm not gonna put a specific number on it. I mean, you may have 2 or 3 that emerge as top contenders, okay? And from those organizations, you may have some more specific things that you would like to ask of them. And so if that is the case, we would then go back to each of them and ask them to respond to any additional questions. And I'm trying to think if that happened in our consulting RFP process. It may have, but I'm not sure. And then
there
you,
were clarifying questions that came from some of the respondents, and we provided that question and the answer to all.
correct. So it's something analogous to that, okay?
I'm a little concerned with that particular process. If we're going to be asking for proprietary, perhaps clarifying information from any one of these potential partners, I would not want to say if that is set in stone.
Yeah. It's more of them asking us for.
No, we may have some questions.
That's the reverse, I'm with you,
Yeah, so this is gonna be the reverse, and in terms of process, this is yet another reason why we really wanted to make sure that we have a short-term legal advisor so that we can figure out what the guardrails are and how we design a process that allows for some sort of a competitive process here, but also, is in keeping with your public hospital district status.
Now,
Okay.
it could be more than one final proposal. The final proposal can come from several respondents, could it not?
Maybe, I mean, it depends on how much, let's just say that you've narrowed it down to 2, but you have some additional questions that you'd like to ask of the 2. You get the answers back, and the answers have you say, oh, okay, I think we're down to 1.
Yeah, I guess what I'm asking is the final proposals. They can make a final proposal, we can interject questions or we can exchange, and then still comes a final proposal before we move to the next step. Isn't that correct?
It's not final until.
You mean amending one of the proposal,
I think he's talking about negotiating. Are you talking about negotiating something, Jay?
Yeah, I'm asking at what point is there a final proposal? And then at what point is there a letter of intent or definitive agreement, and what is the difference between the latter two?
Okay, so I think we might be getting into on the final proposal piece, it's just what I've described to you. They will be providing one formal response to the RFP, and then they will be providing, if anyone that makes it to the top shortlist, will be providing any supplemental information that you request of them to help clarify any questions that you have about their proposal. At that point, that's
the plan.
kind of what
That's
I'm
the plan. So a
calling
letter of
a final.
intent only involves one response.
Correct.
It involves your choice,
right.
essentially.
So
And then what is the difference between letter of intent and definitive agreement? Same thing, essentially.
but let me actually speak to the first. So just because you've selected a finalist and everything seems to be working out, really well and smoothly, doesn't mean that the very next day you're necessarily working through a letter of intent. What you're going to do at that point is walk through a process of talking through the key way in which you're envisioning this coming together, and the letter of intent is sort of an outline of what you're envisioning the relationship to be, the future relationship to be with this organization. And you can think of the letter of intent, there's a lot of analogies to engagement, okay? It's, for a non-public organization, it would actually be, everything would be very confidential and under wraps up to the point of a letter of intent would be normally when you would see news headlines and things like that.
The letter of intent is signed by both parties.
It is signed by both parties. It is non-binding.
Non-binding.
It is non-binding.
One thing,
And that,
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
you finish.
you finish.
I brought this up before to all the board members, and it's come up several times. I'm really concerned that our RFP responses are going to be very general in nature, with not a lot of specifics because of the proprietary nature. I don't expect any of these organizations to do a lot of specific, here's what we're going to do, and this is our way of doing business, and by the way, here's our files to supplement this stuff. It's not going to happen.
No.
It's going to be, well, we'd like to do in a general perspective.
Yeah.
And so
And we're looking for more specific.
I think the process, in my opinion, is going to be, we're going to have to probably do our best due diligence to look at, generalize who do we really want to do and who can we trust. It's not going to be, I don't think we're going to get real specific information out of this RFP.
May I add on to that? I agree, and I'm very concerned that we're going to be asking too much at the start that may discourage respondents from getting involved. And I explained this to my colleague the other day. It's like if you take a funnel and you put the narrow part at the top, then you're going to miss all those down at the bottom that might be of interest. And so if you're too specific in the RFP, you've made a very narrow entryway into your process. Whereas if you turn the funnel upside down and ask, now I know this is oversimplification, but if you were just to say, here are our assets and our possibilities, what is your vision for our hospital, and how would you go about achieving it? Something that general, without all these little demands on our part. it's oversimplification, but you see what I'm saying?
Gene, I kind of agree with you, which is rare, but I do agree
it's-
with that. And the bottom line here for this taxing district is get rid of debt. And however, and you're gonna have to give some leeway on how these organizations are gonna do it to be able to beat the competitors once they implement their strategies and not give away what they feel might be very proprietary to the competitor, say Washington, University of Washington versus Swedish coming in here. And that's, I'm concerned about that, I guess, in such a way that I don't know, I haven't been through the process, so I
Just
don't
say
know.
you don't feel comfortable.
Yeah, I kind of don't.
So I think this is a little bit of a difficult conversation to have without the draft RFP. And I would really like to also have the benefit of the legal review of the RFP and comment specifically. One of the things that I've asked of her is with regard to the process.
Okay.
How can we design the process in a way that provides some safety and allows the organization to reveal what they are comfortable revealing at different stages of the game and in what setting. So I think we really need to wait until we have some counsel on that. What I will say though is that frankly, the covering the debt is the big. There isn't a lot else. For example, the partner overview section. I can bet you I could write a partner overview for any number of different organizations for those that publish a really good annual report, which most do. So it's not, there isn't anything specific that we are asking them in the RFP about their proprietary strategies. So I think it's really around, do you want to be transparent about the goals of affiliation? And it sounds like that's one piece that is important to put right out there in the RFP. And I think that is likely, the one that is going to be a little bit more limiting in terms of what types of deal structures you might see.
That said, I think we would be almost, it would be less than forthcoming for us to, absent the RFP, that criteria. It's so important to
Right.
us
Right.
that I think we don't want people to think that they could come in and that would be on the table. I think we've got to say that that's important to us and include it.
Well, yeah, I think you're totally right, Tom. And I think when we get these responses, I think we have to have some kind of introduction about what can be kept confidential
Yes,
and what
yes,
can't,
yes.
and then what we will be discussing in public forum and what is
Yes.
protected,
Yes,
so that they feel comfortable about
Yes.
being able to
Right.
come to us.
Yeah.
And obviously the attorney could be able to write something up with respect to that.
Yeah.
But as a board, we have to be transparent, we always have to be. But in something like this, if we
We also
lose
have
a
to-
couple of those lower votes because we opened it up to maybe, dissuading someone from responding. I want to know, I know there's a clause, the state statute says, that when we're entering into negotiations on land or even leases, we can keep that confidential. And so I want to have a really strict procedure so that we don't violate the public right to know
While at the
versus
same
the
time being
diligence,
discreet and.
the diligence
Yeah.
that it must take in this kind of situation. And so I guess we need to get that structure and if we have to have a executive session to understand that, I think maybe that.
And there's probably a lot of gray that we would be getting into and not even knowing that we're getting into it. David would know, but some of the rest of us might not know. So I think a little bit of a homework lesson or a time for us to find out. What can we say, what can we not say, what's appropriate and what's not.
Well, and to what extent,
Yeah.
to what extent, and what can we take into executive session, and what can't we?
We don't want to violate the public's, knowledge of it, but at the same time, we also want to be wise about what we say.
So,
I think just one last, what can we take, any documents taken into an executive session are public knowledge. Most likely unless.
Well, if they have to do with leases,
Yeah.
real estate transactions.
Well,
those are
that's
not-
a square area, that's the gray area, because when I read,
Well, see, lease is a possibility in this proposal. Therefore, at any rate, I think we need legal clarification,
Yes.
correct, on what should be public and what really, we have justification in going into executive session. Now, what needs to be, we can take what we might have otherwise done in executive session and do it in public, but it might be very unwise to do so. So we need to know where these more sensitive issues can we take into executive session.
So here's what I'll say. I asked the first question very explicitly of Ann Redmond. I asked her, in addition to providing specific comment on the draft RFP, would she please give some thought to and be prepared to have a discussion next week about just this? Now, you're also asking a number of very detailed questions about the kinds of things you can say and not say and the specific rules of engagement. So I think what I'd like to do is add one more item to your homework assignment, which is, would you please come to these meetings that we have scheduled with you next week with your specific questions so that we can expeditiously get them addressed by the attorney. And if you're feeling like you need it, maybe what we could do is patch her in by phone at some point to talk through it with you or with a couple of you at a time or whatever it takes.
Could I ask one right now?
Yeah.
And that is, can we put into the RFP some kind of statement that if there's anything that is highly confidential from your organization, please flag that for us and we can discuss it. And that would let us know. I just don't want somebody to say, we're not going to submit because of this little requirement here. That's what I'm afraid of.
But it's two separate questions. Yes, we will be really clear as we can from the information we get back from legal counsel about, what's public and what's not. And I actually remember this in our response of, Steve and I talking through, okay, what are we gonna put out there and be transparent about? And, how worried are we that, other consultants are gonna riff off of us? Well, we decided it was worth the risk to be more transparent, but this is a little bit different deal. So I think we will put that information in there. That is, we'll have that for sure so that they will know what they're responding to and they will know how it's going to be viewed.
Yeah, the level of confidentiality.
Yes,
No.
right, yes.
Okay.
And the second question though is to the detail that we're requesting in the RFP. We'll walk through it in a lot more detail with you individually, and you can let us know if you feel that it is, phrased in a way that feels too restrictive. And if it is, we can adjust. I think right now, what we're operating under the assumption that you're gonna get a variety of responses and not all of the responses are going to be able to say that they're able to meet all of the commitments that you've outlined. And I don't know that that's gonna necessarily mean that they're not going to respond if they have a strong interest in the opportunity. It just means that, you know, once you get that response and you see what else you get, you're gonna need to use your weighting and the scoring that we're gonna come up with to make a determination about where that nets them out.
Excuse me, go ahead.
I understand the importance of transparency. Perhaps you can enlighten me, maybe our legal counsel, to talk more about antitrust laws.
So, antitrust will come a little bit later in the process, so that's the reason we got a little bit stuck on, we didn't fully answer your question, Jean. So there's the letter of intent, and after the letter of intent is signed, then begins a formal due diligence process. And during that period of time, each organization is doing its due diligence on the other organization. In parallel, there are a number of other things that are happening. And that is the time at which the Federal Trade
So the
Commission.
responses,
All the compliance
all those
issues.
responses will narrow down to what their intent is, to see whether.
Can there be more than one letter of intent?
You will have one letter of intent with one organization that you have invited to be your dance partner, and you're gonna, if you make it through due diligence successfully, most of the time, a majority of the time, I don't have specific statistics for you. By the time you get to a letter of intent, you have a very, very strong,
Understanding what each other wants.
yes, and you have a very, very strong possibility of consummating a deal.
And the
And it
consummating
could
the
also
deal,
fail.
and the consummating of the deal is definitive agreement.
That is the definitive agreement, but you have to go through the due diligence process, and simultaneous with that would be when the Federal Trade Commission review would happen, and simultaneous with that would be, there'd be regulatory and
Yeah,
other.
because there's quite a few instances,
Certificate
quite a
of
few
need
of them
and all
that
that
failed
stuff.
to even at the last minute.
So you do read about deals that, you know, that fall apart, and it does happen sometimes, but, you know, that's why this whole part of the process, as painstaking as it might feel right now, is so important, because if you all feel really clear on, you know, what you want to get out of it and what kind of a partner you're looking for, that'll, you know, you'll be able to review those proposals with
It helps us with the criteria for review. It also helps them to know what we're looking for, so that there aren't surprises during the due diligence.
Yeah, it's a two-way street.
Yeah.
Yes, it is a two-way street.
Okay, so, with that, this isn't really an exercise. I've already asked you the question, do the criteria seem to make sense?
For the most part, it came right from us, so I mean,
Yeah.
whether
Whether it makes sense
legal
or not.
counsel would advise to continue to ask or request these types of reviews.
Is there any last, bit that needs clarification or
That
anything
may come
missing?
in the one-on-ones after more review, probably.
Sure, you can answer number 2 and number 3 in your homework assignment, but I'm giving you a third. Okay, so your homework assignment then, prior to, if you're meeting with us on, some of you are meeting with us on the 30th and some on the 1st. Correct? Yes, that's the 30th and the 1st. So,
See there before you applied it to them.
So, this is your weighting. So, one way to do weighting is to go through a very grueling process and get all of you to agree
Okay.
to a percentage,
Okay.
and they all need to add up to 100%.
Right.
Well, that is a really hard way to do this process, and so your brilliant superintendent came up with a better way, which is that you individually weight these. And then what we're going to do is, the weighting is just the relative importance of these criteria to each of you individually.
Okay.
Then, separate from that, will be a scoring system for evaluating the proposals. And that will be hopefully a lot clearer and cleaner. It'll be whether we use a 0 to 5 or a 0 to 10, but there'll be a specific score and a description of what
The board
Meeting
requires,
that
and that
score,
would be
yes.
transparent to any prospective respondent. So if we get 5 on criteria 2, all 5 is, that'd be a 25. It would be a very high, the highest you could get, and that way they would look at, they go, wow, this is the most important that they want. Can we do that? And
So are we going to be, I
Makes
guess, I'm a little, I'm a little bit, based on some of the other things that I, we were the grantors, we have to review, we're a review committee, and each one gets all this 50, applicants, and then we each, rate them, and then it goes on the board and everybody votes, I guess. So are we going to be able to say the RFPs for every one of them, or only one person will give that score? Or make that final decision? And the score
May I?
system. I'm a little, okay.
The process has been contemplated through the weighting.
Okay.
The next step is, as Sarah mentioned, is to put together the process of the scoring. Okay, so we're not quite there yet on the process of the scoring, but suffice to say that in the end, it'll be weighting multiplied by scoring to come up with a score for each of these criteria, and then adding those up to see how each of the respondents compare to one another.
I guess I'm getting ahead, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
No, but in that regard, I'm a little uncomfortable when you said that if you think they're all 5, you can make 5. It seems like we need to prioritize so that the score means something.
Well, it will mean something, and the reason is that we're asking you to each do this individually, and we're going to come up with an average weighting for each of the criteria. So it could be that criterion number 2 is, that you give it a 5, someone else gives it a 3, someone else gives it a 1, someone else gives it a 0. The average is going to be the weight for that. And then we will have a scoring system that will be much cleaner and clearer for, are they meeting the required elements of the RFP, et cetera, and you're gonna give them a score after we have the benefit of reviewing their proposal. And each score will be added up and multiplied by the weight.
But the little dot exercise that
Yes.
we did.
Yes,
We only got so many dots.
right,
And we didn't put all our dots on one. But
Right.
if we can make 5 out of all these without any accountability, then I think that destroys the purpose.
Well,
We need to separate
I think
the ones from the 5s.
I'll just say this, I think what we're depending upon here is that human nature will be that you will not give 5s to everything. There will be differences in priority in your minds among these criteria, and you're probably not. I think it's very unlikely that any of you are going to give 5s to everything. And as Sarah mentioned,
Well, you get my point.
I do. And Sarah mentioned
If you put 5s on 2 of the categories, for instance, that kind of skews it. So I wish we could say, you get to put 5s on 1, and that's your highest priority, and then the others have to follow.
But the problem with that is that somebody may feel totally equal, but that two of the criteria in their mind are completely equal in their importance to that. And as Sarah mentioned, the process will be to take the average of all of your weights, and that will end up providing a composite.
So I, by the way, have, Steve and I will probably be getting a little wager going because we're getting to know each of you a little bit better. And I suspect that you're going to, whether or not you have 2 5s, that there are going to be clear differences between the things that are really, really important to you and the things that are not so important to you. And that's one of the reasons why we felt like this was a more elegant process and a way of arriving at weights rather than trying to come up with a group consensus on a percentage weighting, which is, at the end of the day, we're averaging the weights, so we should be getting a pretty.
You take the Olympic score and you take the highest and then the lowest and spread it.
That's what it
That's
does,
right?
actually.
That's usually how it
Yeah.
works, yeah,
Yeah.
the highest.
I'm pretty sure
Scratch
that
those
anyone that wants to do a response is probably gonna get some recorded meetings and understand some of the most important things that we want.
Yeah.
Pretty sure of that, so.
Well, what about that? Should we give them a videotape?
No, they're already out there.
No, I don't think they want,
I mean,
they want to be able to
have a level playing field so that all of the respondents have a.
No, I think they need to do their research. I think that shows how serious they are.
Yeah, exactly. They have to take ownership.
All right, you have 2 more parts of your homework assignment.
Oh,
I'm sorry, one more part.
Finish
So we already got through this. So you're gonna answer number 2, and you're gonna do this weighting exercise. And then the third thing is, please come with any specific questions you have with regard to the process and the confidentiality or public nature of the process, so that we can make sure to get those questions answered.
come, at what point?
To our individual one-on-one
Okay,
meetings next
I
week.
just want to clarify, it's at the individual meetings that you want those specific
Yeah.
questions.
And is this all the listed organizations that's receiving RFP? You haven't,
You can
Wow.
finish.
you didn't finish, you're not quite done. There's only
Good segue.
2 more
Okay.
pages.
Thank you for keeping us honest here. Okay,
Yeah, there we go.
so this is very similar list to what you saw before.
Except there's an addition there
There's two additions, Peace Health
in the cancer treatment.
and Cancer Treatment Centers of America.
With respect to UW Medicine, where it says Valley, Seattle Cancer Care Alliance, Children's Hospital, would they get individual RFPs, or is it just going to
Is that
UW
one now?
Medicine?
Because they're all
So,
partners, aren't they? They're all part of that affiliation.
they are all part of a system,
Affiliates.
and,
So are you doing medicine?
yeah. I think that the thing is that, there may be a couple of the organizations that could have a different level of interest,
Yeah.
than the system as a whole. I would say, I'm just gonna use Valley as an example, not that I don't have any idea at this point. They're not, one of the organizations that we've had any contact with about this, but,
Of course, Valerie is a binary organization with a public hospital district
Right.
and UW Board of Trustees.
so, yeah.
And so
Yeah.
those are different parts.
Right.
They're independent.
On
So,
Evergreen is even more because you're in 2 counties. You've got 2 counties doing public health hospitals, one's Snohomish County and the other's King County.
Yeah, I think Jean's question is it only the strategy person
Yeah,
at the
I-
parent
what I would-
organization
what I would
that's gonna get it,
suggest-
yeah.
What I would suggest is send a copy to UW Medicine and inform them that you're also sending a copy to.
Most
these-
likely, that's what we'll do. I think we need to understand a little bit more how they would like to do this as well. But we also do have individual contacts at each one of those organizations, so. Okay, and then, this part of this side has not changed at all. So any additions or
Can we make additions
subsequent?
after tonight?
If you have any, please bring your additions to our meetings. And that way.
To our personal meetings?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
I think what we're trying to do is set up this next touch point that we have with you on the 8th to be as efficient as possible. I believe you have other business on that night, and I feel like I'm flunking tonight in terms of my type facilitation.
It looks like most of our local, except for Kaiser, because Kaiser is California and maybe the Vita.
Kaiser is local.
Kaiser Permanente.
That's why they took over Mental Health.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
How about the CHI? That's Colorado, right?
So,
No, that's Everett.
But the headquarters.
Let's not count the chickens before they hatch, and let's just wait.
Yeah.
Let's get the process going, and I move for adjournment.
Okay.
Is there a second?
Second.
Well, I'd like to ask Sarah, are you finished first before we
Oh
adjourn?
no, she's not done yet. Sorry.
Go for it.
She said she was kind of,
Sorry. Okay.
Excuse me, Sarah, you wanna finish?
I've been trying to be responsive to your
No,
I know.
that's all right.
Okay, so the public hearing outline. So, yes, Commissioner Herron, several of those organizations are national organizations that have a local presence. So, the outline for the public hearing, a brief update on the affiliation strategy and process to date, an overview of the guiding principles and goals of affiliation, inviting the public to comment on those guiding principles and goals. That's the plan. Okay. So the second bullet point here, what we had talked about was to have 2 points in the process where we would have at least 1 public hearing, and that would be this point in the process and down the line when you have a letter of intent. So I think the question is, and we don't have to decide it tonight, but the question is when we get to that point, because that's a kind of get to know the potential partner a little bit opportunity, would it make sense to have a repeat performance in more than 1 location in part of the district at that point?
It might not be a bad idea.
Upper and lower, this is what we've contemplated.
Okay. So we won't let go of that. I know that's a particular interest of yours.
Well, it's just that we're seen by many in the district as being too Snoqualmie centric.
Yeah.
And we're holding this public hearing in Snoqualmie City Hall, and it just contributes to that image. And so I think it wouldn't hurt, it would be an opportunity, even if only a half a dozen show up. That's more than we get for our regular board meetings. If we were to hold a similar hearing down in the lower valley, and then yes, later we could do it when we have a letter of intent or whatever. But I think it's an opportunity to sell our program to people at a very low cost and try to change that image that we're only interested in Snoqualmie.
So just to be clear, what's being proposed here is that we do our hearing on the 30th.
Yeah.
At this point, down the road, when we're in intent phase, we do 2, 1 in upper, 1 in lower valley.
Okay, and I perfectly understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it might be worth it to do a hearing, the one we're doing on the 30th, also do it in the lower valley. But I'm just, want to toss that out for consideration.
we
It
can't
won't have
decide
effect.
here, so
It will have effect on the timeline, that is the challenge.
Yeah.
this is a work session, don't
Yep.
do any decision making.
That's, and we got.
Except deciding to go to bed, go home and go to bed.
Thank you, David.
Okay.
Okay. Got another
doing meetings appropriately, and you made a motion and I seconded it, all of this should be point of order, you know.
That's true. I may have jumped the gun, I don't know. Did I get a second? I did,
No,
didn't I?
you can't do that process in this meeting.
Oh, okay. To adjourn, even to adjourn?
Oh, I'm sorry, to adjourn.
Well, no, but we were going to show common courtesy to our consultant who hadn't finished.
Sorry.
I think that David did that somewhat tongue in cheek, am I right, David?
No, he's
You know, I know what my assignment is and I'm ready to go and hit the ropes and get it done.
Okay.
Okay?
Woo!
Don't need to really,
Can I ask one question? What if we don't get the responses we expect? Number one, is there something we say in the RFP like, if you intend not to respond, let us know that too, so we can write them off?
That is what Sarah talked about is the letter, which is the intent to respond. So we'll know right away.
Well, it's not a letter of intent, it's a
Intent to respond. And we'll
Okay.
know that very early, before we ever get proposals. We'll know who's putting them together.
Okay. And is there any way that if people don't respond with anything, the letter, anything, that we can go back and talk with them and see what's the problem? It might be a very minor thing.
So that's part of the reason that we wanna set it up this way, so that if we need to go out,
Reconciliation.
shop around a little bit more,
Okay.
we can.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay,
Excellent
All right.
presentation.
Thank you.
so we've had a motion to move,
I second.
second, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
sorry, Sarah.
Oh wait, public comment, we did not have public comment.
Didn't you have it at the beginning? That's
We
what
did.
the agenda was.
It's still on the agenda.
Okay.
Is there any
We've already
public comment?
All right, I move to reopen and
Thank you, David. And all those in favor of reopening, I assume, yes.
Yes.
Is there any public comment? Do you have any public comment? No public comment?
No problem.
All right.
No comment, no meteor. Let's say
so
this.
I again move to adjourn.
Thanks, Josh.